Surprise, surprise, corporate users actually like Windows 11. And in this episode of This Week in IT, I'll tell you why. Plus, we'll look at Microsoft's Q2 earnings report, who are the winners and losers, and Microsoft's latest investment in OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT. So I want to start off today with some interesting information that I stumbled across from Gartner. So Gartner is saying that many big organizations this month are already in piloting Windows 11 or about to start their pilot program. So that's really interesting that it looks like Windows 11 adoption is starting to pick up a little bit, albeit slowly. Now, they also said as part of this that most organizations are only really looking to pilot Windows 11 on new devices that they're purchasing. There isn't much sense for them at the moment to upgrade from Windows 10 because it does everything that they need it to do, and they're only going to really start looking at those upgrades in late 2024 as the deadline for moving away from Windows 10 looms. So it seems that Windows 11 is still going to have an uphill struggle. What's even more interesting, and it doesn't come as a surprise to me to be honest, but I think it's going to come as a surprise to a lot of people, that again, according to Gartner and the feedback that they've been getting from IT shops that they work with, is that, wait for it, users actually like Windows 11. So it might be, of course, that the tech community and IT pros are not over the moon about the UI changes, but it seems that people who are not tech savvy, who are not, IT pros, that they actually like these changes. So, of course, Microsoft has tried to make Windows 11 more phone-like, more streamlined, a more consistent UI, and these are all things that users have cited as something that they like about Windows 11. So it seems that the UI and the direction that Microsoft is moving in with the user interface is a real hit with users. And, I really do think, and I might be out on a limb with this, that Microsoft is moving in the right direction and doing the right thing with all of these UI changes in Windows 11. Now, I know there are people who are desperate for things back like being able to move the taskbar across to the left or the right. And, I understand that may really interrupt those people's workflow if they were to upgrade, because you can't do that in Windows 11 at the moment. But I think that Microsoft is making a bet that, just not enough people use that feature to make it worth the investment in time for development and testing, because it's a kind of an edge case that so few people use, and it probably just doesn't make sense to really invest the time and effort in putting those things back in. But we'll see in the future, maybe Microsoft will think about that kind of stuff. I think they're gradually starting to put stuff back in that people do actually use. Things like folders on the start menu that we already have now probably should have been there from the beginning, but it's there now. And I think that Microsoft is looking to make those kind of investments, and of course that makes sense. Now, we know that, of course, adoption of Windows 11 hasn't been as strong as its predecessor, but Satya Nadella did say back in October last year that Accenture has already deployed Windows 11 to 450,000 of its employees, and L'Oreal more than 80,000. So, nevertheless, that is a win for Windows 11, of course. So, what about the Q2 earnings report? So, Microsoft's revenue is up 2% year on year, so that's obviously good for shareholders. But there are definitely some winners and fairly major losers in this earnings report. So what really shocked me initially was the 39% drop in revenue for Windows and Windows-related services from PC makers. Now, when you think about it, that probably shouldn't be that much of a surprise. So, of course, during the pandemic, there was a massive shift in working from home. So organizations needed to enable that quickly. So there was a big scramble to not only find solutions that worked on scale for remote access, but also the hardware that people needed to suddenly work from home if they were previously, purely an office worker. So it shouldn't come as much of a surprise that after the pandemic, as things start to cool down and we head back to some kind of normality, that the demand for PC hardware has declined significantly. There were also some other big losers. So device revenue was down 34%. Of course, that's also connected to why Windows revenue is down, and Xbox is also down 12%. So the biggest concentration seemed to be around Azure growth. Now, Azure grew 31% year on year, but growth is slowing. So that, of course, is a concern for shareholders as Azure forms one of the biggest money makers for Microsoft. So what did Satya Nadella have to say to people who were on that earnings call? So from his point of view, this is about organizations that invested heavily in the cloud during the pandemic, and now they're slowing down a bit to optimize those investments. And it could be over the next year or two that organizations really spend their time trying to get the most out of those investments that they've made over the last couple of years. And then according to Nadella, they will basically pick up, or cloud revenue will basically pick up as we go forwards. But it may take a little bit of time to see that pickup take flight. So server and cloud services revenue was up 20%. Office and services were up 7% and Dynamics 13%, so that's obviously all good news. And Team continues to grow. So, this doesn't surprise me. I imagine that growth has slowed quite a lot since, of course, the 2 years of pandemic. But nevertheless, growth is still there with Teams. And what Satya said during the call is that they also expect revenue to grow faster as they move some of the features that are in Teams that you and I use today to a premium subscription to try and increase revenue around Teams. So obviously that's going to make some people unhappy, but should hopefully make shareholders happy. So all in all, it was a mixed bag, of course, and Satya said that this is going to be a tough couple of years for technology, but Microsoft continuing to grow, still growing in the right places, and of course Windows hasn't been a big money maker or an important business for Microsoft for many years now. So the fact that it's kind of dropped back down to pre-pandemic levels shouldn't really cause much alarm. So yesterday, probably you were aware that Azure and Microsoft 365 services went down for a lot of people around the globe. So what caused this? Now, this was basically due to a wide area networking update that Microsoft had applied, and it caused a whole load of problems. Microsoft were able to quickly identify the issue, the update was rolled back, and the issues went away, and that was it. So, these things happen from time to time. Microsoft, of course, isn't the only service provider that occasionally has issues. It seems to me that it was relatively quickly resolved. Let me know in the comments below what your experiences with it were yesterday. I didn't see any problem with Teams or Microsoft 365 personally, but I did see a lot of people commenting on Twitter that they were having issues with those services and with Azure, of course. So this is something that Microsoft, probably need to get a grip on, because I think this isn't the first time that a networking update has caused these kinds of issues. So maybe they need to look at how those updates are tested to make sure that this doesn't happen again, because if I remember correctly, this is already the second time that a networking update has caused this kind of worldwide outage. Microsoft also announced this week that they're making another big investment in OpenAI. Now, Microsoft has been a big investor in this company, I think really from the very beginning. So I think they invested about $2 billion back in 2019. They invested again in 2021, and now we're going to get another big investment. So this week, Microsoft announced that its Azure OpenAI service is now generally available, and this service, allows you to basically use all of those features that are connected that we've been kind of hearing about in the news. Things like ChatGPT and the DALL-E image creation service, and a whole load of other services that Microsoft hopes that organizations are going to use in its Azure cloud. Now, as part of this announcement this week, they said that this new investment is going to enable 3 different things. So supercomputing at scale, so allowing organizations to harness the power of supercomputing but at global scale. New AI experiences in products and services. So you think really Windows, especially Windows 12. We talked quite a bit about that last week on this podcast. And of course, Office, bringing new experiences to those 2 platforms. And they said that Azure is going to be the exclusive cloud provider for OpenAI. So whenever you do anything with ChatGPT, all of those services are going to be hosted in the background on Azure. So that should also be a big boon for Azure going forwards. If you found this video useful, then I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a like. And I'm going to leave another video on the screen now that you might find useful, so do check that out. But that's it from me, and I'll see you next time.